wanted to make this video just kind of calling out things as I see them in the fitness industry specifically. So, I want to make this channel about a lot of different things. I've been putting off kind of getting my content rolling, but recently saw something that was pretty concerning that made me think that it was a bit of it was the right time to at least make a first post. So if you guys haven't heard of like looks maxing, and obviously like aren't aware of the steroid epidemic that's been going on, it's becoming very normalized to the point where I remember even my sister, she called me one day because I happen to know a lot about fitness, health, bodybuilding, even though I have yet to compete. My sister casually calling me, asking me for her friend, like, oh, what SARMs I should take, or what SARMs he should take, all this different stuff, like super casually. Like, mind you, like, in my opinion, that should be like socially the equivalent of like asking some girl if hers, because mind you, my sister is like 7 years older than me, asking a girl if her little brother knows like what the best type of like amphetamines are to to like rave all night, in my opinion. Because in fitness, I think that there's like two categories of people. There's gonna be the people who are obsessed with just getting like the quick results, the people who just like granted, I was gonna say, like, if they could just take a pill to achieve the physique, they would just take it. Mind you, most people would, but I feel like when you take the shortcut in life, you definitely don't appreciate the result as much as if, hey, you took the time, you created the habits, you did what was hard, but what was good. So that's kind of how I see it right now. But because obviously social media, we're gonna reward the flashy physiques, the crazy transformations, the polarizing beliefs, right? So that's been kind of what everyone is accustomed to. At this point, like I'm seeing it even among my social circle. It's like people just like, why would I wait 10 years to get something I can get in 10 months if I take the right stuff, and realistically, like, yeah, I mean, you can do that, but think about what that physique would mean to you if it took, if you could just achieve being a doctor in a year, right? And so, but you make the same amount of money, how many more doctors would there be, right? But the question is, how many more good doctors would there be, right? I would argue that the proportion of good doctors would go down, in contrast to the doctors who are just in there for the money, right? Because, hey, like, you had to study, you had to sacrifice to achieve something, right? How how much harder are you gonna maintain that achievement? Like, if you could just like jump from being a doctor to being a lawyer after 1 year of school, like, being a doctor wouldn't really mean much. And so that's kind of what I see happening in the fitness industry. Because, hey, if for example, me, I've been working out consistently for about 6 years now. Not all those 6 years have been fully bodybuilding focused, but I've been taking like a conscious step towards my health for 6 years, 7 years, more or less.
Enrique!
If you could just go from being a doctor, a world-renowned doctor, to going to like trying your luck as a lawyer, it just wouldn't really have as much weight as if, you were kind of locked into that path. Granted, like, hey, any great doctor could go and become a great lawyer. We only have so much time in life, and if you're not willing to dedicate that time to like the pursuit of something great, clearly you're not really like just genuinely passionate about it and wanting to make a positive difference in that field. So, in personal beliefs on fitness and my own physique, even kind of off a display for the moment. I want to make my own video, just kind of going through my own journey. As I mentioned, it wasn't just a straight line. There were a lot of ups and downs, and you know, the real beauty about um, you know self improvement, especially when it comes to bodybuilding. I see it a lot of self improvement. When you value the work you've already put in and the progress you've made, it genuinely hurts to see it like get destroyed or tarnished. So I feel like that's something that needs to be appreciated more, because hey, if like for me, if I put 5 years into creating the physique I have, and now I'm going down a path of eating, junk or whatever else, and not sticking to like the new diet for myself that I know is good. Inherently, all of us know when we're not being good on our diets and kind of eating junk food or whatever way of eating that is not good for you, and you continue to do so. We all know when we're doing it, right? And so when you start going down the wrong path again, and you see the progress you've made start to crumble, I think it's that respect for the work you've already put in that draws you back into the right path. And so I think if you can, then were to compare that to someone who just, hopped on steroids, got immediate results, fell into the love of the gym because, hey, every week I get bigger. I see it in the mirror. I'm going to keep pumping up the steroids, keep pumping the weights. And then soon after that, hey, if you have a crazy transformation, post it on social media. Now you start getting the dopamine that way. Now you're getting likes, you're getting money, attention, right? And so, I feel like it's a positive feedback loop of ignorance, really, because, hey, you got into it for one reason, now you're doing it for a whole other reason. And, if you look at someone like Togi, for example, right, like nowadays, he says it himself, he like hardly works out. And like there's all these like viral clips of like, him asking girls like, hey, like, would you date a guy if he's on steroids, right? And then like just, I don't remember exactly what it was, but like, she was like, hey, I mean, you don't really look like you're on steroids, right? But then he like, he acknowledges he's on steroids. So it's like this kind of awkward moment. It's like, yeah, this guy is doing something horrible for his health, not to mention like the financial aspect. I can imagine steroids aren't cheap. I wouldn't know. But just it's yeah, being like doing all that just to look like you are someone you're really not, and then when it's not really the most important thing in your life to keep your content alive. In Togi's case, now he's transitioned more into like gambling and such, and streaming. Now it's not really the most important thing, and look at his physique, he kind of just disappeared. So I feel like there's gonna be a bigger chasm between the younger fitness crowd and the older fitness crowd, because I just see it in my generation. There's just way less of people who are long-term oriented. Most people are really thinking short.
The hardest things are usually the best. If it's easy, leave it to somebody else. That's commitment. That's really what bodybuilding's all about. Most people want it instant.
They're thinking, hey, I'm gonna do this for the next couple of years. I'm gonna go to the gym as much as I need to, just to like get like women and stuff, and like and then soon enough, they want to look bigger than everyone else, but still not sacrifice, going out at night and drinking and partying. So I feel like, yeah, it's gonna be pretty ugly. There's gonna be a lot more for just a lot less, which is why I wanted to start making a difference in some way. So, someone like Togi, he's not gonna really care as much that the body he built gets destroyed. And I'll use another person who used steroids, but is kind of the opposite example. I would say like Arnold. You know, Arnold wasn't the nicest guy in all things, but he was always a legend. And so like he had a genuine like love for the sport. So I feel like even after he left bodybuilding and he went towards, obviously like acting and such, and obviously acting I guess kind of still needed that bodybuilding, muscle for his roles, but he was someone who genuinely loved working out and genuinely loved bodybuilding and understood like the principles and studied from like his own like elders, like Steve Reeves and such. So I think that's a good example of like comparing. Hey, there's this person that just wants the result of having amazing physique without the discipline and the drive and the passion. But then if you look at someone who, okay, they did use steroids, but they were, world class genetics, you know, world class technique. Obviously, he was in bodybuilding for a long time. I think the first time he competed was like either when he was like 15 or 18. So, he got into it when he was young, and, he did, it was also before the time they really knew much about steroids. And they weren't as crazy as they are today, like taking Tren and stuff. But yeah, and that was just me playing a little bit of devil's advocate, because I do think in some situations like that, maybe you can make an argument. Okay, you know, bodybuilding really is an extreme sport. It's like BMX biking. It's like, like skydiving, and just in a different way.
Most people want it instant. Nothing's changed since the 70s. Nothing! Except people train not as hard. They don't want results. If you want results, it's going to take hard work for years. And that's the answer.
There's been a non-zero amount of bodybuilders who've died on stage because of like dehydration and malnutrition and stuff like that. So it is an extreme sport. So I will say maybe at the top echelon of competition, steroids have their place, but nowadays I think that is becoming more too glorified. Not everyone needs to shoot for Mr. Olympia, right? Not everyone, maybe they're not shooting for it, but maybe they're delusional that they could ever do it, right? Hell, I would love to think that I could become a Mr. Olympia, but realistically, even though I have pretty good genetics, and I've made great progress myself, there's just no way that I could compete on that level without blasting crazy gear, life-changing shit. Maybe never have kids. That's kind of just part of the dice you roll when you take steroids. Hey, not even get to that point. You could just die straight up. I had a personal trainer when I was younger, and he always told me, it's like, yeah, like no matter what, it's just not worth it. He always told me like, yeah, you could be like the most like fit dude. You could be like exercising all this stuff, and like you think like especially when you're fat, you're like, oh yeah, like a lot of the things you hear from people who are concerned about you. It's like, oh, your heart. It's so bad for your heart when you're overweight because it has to pump blood through this like way bigger body, so it's just so much more strain on the heart, right? And so like when you take it to the other extreme of like, hey, you've lost all this weight, now you're looking better, but then now you're on steroids, and now you're growing all this muscle tissue, right? Like my trainer told me, it's like so much more strain on the heart. It's like so much more volume. So you did all this to be healthy, all this effort, training, exercise, diet to be healthy, but now your heart is under crazy strain because there's all this unnatural tissue on you that has to support, and then it could just give out. He told me he has several friends who, like, he was like a trainer, and I think he had like military experience, something like that. But he told me his friends would just die. It's just, it's a lot in the heart. You could just be working out one day and just boom, you're dead. So I don't think that's really talked about as much as it should be, because, yes, there's like the looking good aspect of working out, but there's also the being healthy aspect of working out, which is really the most important, because what's the point of just looking amazing if it all is like it's built on paper? It's a paper house. You're just gonna collapse. It doesn't take much, really. So yeah, it's always better to take the long route. Like, for example, I it's kind of a random like life story from my side, but like, I think about, like, for example, well, I made it one time El Camino.
Enrique!
So I don't know if you guys ever heard of El Camino. Maybe you've heard of like the Breaking Bad sequel, El Camino, where they go, or it was like Jesse is like getting out of like that prison they had for him, and he's on his way to like Alaska, I think. And yeah, anyways, there's an actual El Camino, which is Spanish for the path, and it basically branches from, like, the end point is in Galicia, Spain, Santiago de Compostela. It's like the north west part of Spain, right above Portugal. And essentially people walk from like France, from Switzerland, from Italy, even Germany, right, all the way down to this one Catholic church, right? And it's a town. It's a really nice town. And so, like, I remember I like had gone twice while I was living in Galicia, and it was really nice. It was a really nice town for sure, and it was funny because, like, yeah, you could either walk all the way from Germany to get to the church, or you could just park your car, walk from the parking lot to the church, and then you can say, "Oh, I made El Camino." That's what my godfather, he was laughing about when he got there. He like came to visit me, and he's like, "Oh, well, technically, I did the El Camino. I walked all the way there." But if you compare him, like, beholding like the really nice cathedral there, versus someone who walked all the way from Germany, who spent weeks, like literally walking, living, like, sleeping in hostels with like crazy like blisters. Like, I remember when I went, it was like really crazy seeing how like messed up their feet were, like all the people who had walked it. And that kind of resonated with me. So there was one time where, right before I went to Switzerland, I figured, hey, like, let me try walking at least a part of it. I was working at the time, so I didn't have much, leeway in terms of being able to take off time to go and walk that path. Like, the path closest to me was like 3 days, so I walked 1/3 of it from Portugal to the town I was living in, and yeah, it was freaking awesome. It was one heck of a time, but making that 3-day journey even, and getting to see the cathedral after that, it would just mean so much more to you, rather than you like took a plane, or you like took a car to drive there. Just it happened in a flash. You didn't even see what you passed. Didn't register. So it's the same thing, I think, with the gym. You could take steroids, you could teleport to your goal, but how long are you gonna stick around and enjoy your goal if you just teleported there, rather than if you walk there, you took time, you took weeks, even you made sacrifices, physically even, right? How long would you stay at that cathedral? I mean, I would imagine pretty long, at least a couple days, other than me who went, took a car, and drove home that same day. So that's kind of my 2 cents on it. There's a different influencer who I wanted to get into on this video, but I think they got a little long, so I will circle back and talk about him as well.